how big a moment in Jiu-Jitsu are we currently seeing with all the changes happening in Austin, Texas? That's the question Ross, I'm asking on the latest edition of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, and I will do my best to answer them all, to get you up to date with the news that's coming out of Texas regarding the two big teams there. New Wave Jiu-Jitsu, which seems to be undergoing a rebrand to Kingsway, and B Team Jiu-Jitsu, which looks like it's going to undergo a rebrand to who knows what. So at a time when we've got no big matches currently happening in Jiu-Jitsu, we had Aiga 2 weeks ago. I thought Aiga was fantastic, and if you want to know what happened, check out the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle episodes that covered it all. Then I went away for a few days, came back, COVID floored me for 5 days. Who knew that was still a thing? Until yesterday, I didn't have a voice. Today, Tuesday, 15th of July, as I record this episode, the voice is back. And yesterday, I believe it was, I awoke to look at a video on YouTube of Craig Jones starting his trip down to CGI2. So Craig's got a car, he's going to go down the east coast of America training at gyms. Then he's going to head over to the west coast to train at gyms to prepare for his match against Gable Steveson, and eventually he's going to arrive in Vegas at the end of August for CGI2 and his match. And then Craig just drops in at the start of the video, well, this could be my last match. I'm moving on from B Team, and that's now going to be headed up by Nicky Ryan in a head coach role, but Nicky Rod, Ethan Krellenston, Damian Anderson, they're still going to be involved in it all. So, but Craig, he's looking to go off and do his own thing. It seems that he's not even going to stay in America. Could be moving on to pastures new. So that was quite the statement to kick things off. And then what's the fallout of all this going to be? Well, I would expect the B Team rebrand now with the simple men at the forefront of it all. The B Team had a big connotation with Craig and his always coming seemingly second, silver medalist perennially. Not quite the A Team, we're the B Team. With Craig moving on, we're going to see, I think, a new name for that team. I'd expect it to be something around about the Simple Men, because the Simple Man podcast has Ethan, Nicky Rod, Damien, we've seen Nicky Ryan on it. So I would think it would involve that. Nicky Ryan stepping up to the head coach role. That's really interesting. I think it's a positive for Nicky. I think in terms of passing on jiu-jitsu knowledge, he's probably the strongest person in that team. I think there have been question marks over time over how seriously Nicky takes his training, or has taken his training as a professional athlete. I kind of thought, I said to one of my friends years ago, when Nicky was experiencing more injuries, it might be a good move for Nicky to go down the coaching route. I just didn't know whether he had the maturity, I guess, to run a team, run a gym. But I think his ability to pass on knowledge is definitely there. We've seen it in lots of videos. So I think in terms of him being able to make athletes better at jiu-jitsu, out of all the guys that are in that upper echelon of the B Team, or whatever they'll be called in the future, I think Nicky Ryan has the knowledge to do that job. And I think maybe, yeah, getting some more responsibility, taking on more of a coaching role will be good for him. And I think that can be of a big benefit to those guys. Now, it's really, really interesting because over on the, I guess, the other side is of the former Danaher Death Squad divide is Gordon Ryan. And John's still there as well, but John said that he might find it more difficult to coach elite athletes. John's undergone surgery. I don't know if he's got more surgery to come, but he's got hip and knee problems. And it looks like Gordon's not going to be competing anymore. And can I just, when I say that, if we're entering a time where Craig's match against Gable Stevenson at CGI2 is his last match in Jiu-Jitsu, and we're not going to have Gordon Ryan competing anymore, Gordon's had a lot of stomach issues that he said really impact his training, make it very hard for him to get the training in necessary to compete at the level he wants to compete at. So perhaps he's just going to focus more on coaching now and doing more coaching, what with John, perhaps finding it more difficult physically to coach. But if we don't have Craig and we don't have Gordon competing, I think that's like a real shame. I think they are the two biggest stars in Jiu-Jitsu. And it'll be interesting to see if anyone can step up and sort of fill the void that'll exist with those two not being on the mats. I hope they still stay involved. I hope we see Gordon at events coaching his guys. I hope Craig stays involved with the whatever the B team becomes called. I think Craig is going to stay involved with coaching in an MMA capacity, helping Volkanovski and Jack Della in their UFC fights. So we might see more of Craig there than in Jiu-Jitsu. But those guys are the biggest stars in the sport. We can see it on the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle. There's nobody that moves numbers, boosts our pod like those two guys when we cover them. So I think it's a real shame if like this is the chapter closing on those two guys' competitive career. But there is a space, two spaces available for people to come up and fill. And I think it is a great time for emerging talent to come through and try and build their brands and become the guys who are sort of the leaders of the no-gi jiu-jitsu scene. Really, really interesting that Nicky Ryan is going to head up one team and then Gordon Ryan is going to head up the other. I know John's still involved with Kingsway, so I don't want to say that like it's Gordon running the show, but it does seem that Gordon is more and more involved. So after this era, well, first we had the ascent of the Danaher Death Squad and all their wins at EBI and them using a heavy leg lock game as a way to beat people who were far less skilled in that area. And then as everyone was catching up, they were then working on their craft and developing new skills. And that really led to Gordon becoming the number one guy in the sport. So we had the rise of the Danaher Death Squad. Then along the way, like new guys came into the squad, like Craig Jones. There was the move to Puerto Rico that didn't work out. Then it kind of fell apart, split apart. The two gyms were formed, B Team and New Wave, and now it looks like it's a new B Team and a new New Wave. But the really interesting thing to me is that it's the two brothers, Gordon and Nicky, that are heading up the sort of rival camps, and it'll be really interesting to see like how the gyms develop under their tutelage, whether they'll start taking different routes in their coaching, which is like, you can still hear in the way they explain jiu-jitsu, it's firmly rooted in what they've learned from John. But Nicky seems to be going down a more games-based, ecological CLA route. So I wonder how far that takes him. And then I wonder with like Gordon, like what his personality within coaching becomes. So really interesting to see like if there's like going to be a big deviation between the gyms, or will it be like those two gyms are still like firmly rooted in the Danaher sort of way of doing things, and but the split's more sort of cultural in terms of the attitude, etc., on the mats. But yeah, it was interesting that when it got announced that Craig was leaving B Team or moving on from B Team, that of course Gordon posted and gave some comments, and I can only paraphrase. If you want to see it on social media, go on his Instagram. But he was basically saying that it looks like after all this time that most of the guys who left what was the most successful team in jiu-jitsu at that time, have either like, probably like moved on again, or, wanted to go back to train with John or whatever. I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, I think like Nicky Rod's done very well for himself, winning the first CGI, winning the $1 million. I think, Nicky Ryan's done well for himself if he's now like ascended to this head coaching role. And I just thought that like maybe Gordon would say, look, I don't get on with like a lot of you guys at that team, but like I think one thing you've done that's going to be smart is like make my brother like the head coach. He's going to be the best guy to learn from. But didn't really seem that like he said that. So he didn't say that. So with Nicky and Gordon in like two very, very prominent positions, it'll be interesting to see like what happens when their paths cross, And like I have to say that because for jiu-jitsu fans looking on, this kind of storyline, drama, narrative, or whatever is interesting. It gets people involved. It gets people excited in the sport. And like this story keeps going. It's just one chapter's closed on this whole Danaher Death Squad story arc, but another one's opening with like Gordon and Nicky now taking the reins at two teams, it seems, with Craig moving on and John seemingly going to be not able to be as hands-on as he was. So I thought for a Jiu-Jitsu Oracle episode, it's been 2 weeks since Aiga. Like I said, I went away, then I came back, then I got COVID. I thought like this moment in time in Jiu-Jitsu has to be marked. So I'm really keen to get your comments, get your opinions, etc., on this new era we're seeing in jiu-jitsu in Austin, Texas. And just a side note on that, I believe I was listening to Andrew Tackett on the Simple Man podcast, and I believe he said that he, and I assume William as well, are going to move to Las Vegas, which is the HQ of the UFC. Also, they compete for UFC BJJ. I think their friend / teammate Cody Steele is out there at Syndicate MMA, so they're going to train at Syndicate, but they've also got access to the Performance Institute, and they're now at their point in their jiu-jitsu looking for more consistent time, higher level training partners. So they were also based in Austin, Texas at Brazilian Fight Factory. So like this Austin Jiu-Jitsu landscapes changing massively. All at the same time, it looks like the Tacketts are heading to Vegas to further their career. It looks like B Team's undergoing a rebrand, new head coach. And then it looks like, well, Kingsway have now opened a new facility. Gordon seems to be the man who's really pushing it and coaching most there. So it's a bit of a state of flux, and it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. How do you think it'll all shake out? Are you interested in it? I'm interested in it. And I think it's going to be really interesting in CGI 2 because we're going to get B Team and New Wave both competing still under those names, and it could be like the last dance of B Team against New Wave. So that would be really, really interesting. It's not confirmed that those two teams will face off. I would be surprised if they meet in the first round, because they both be heavily favoured to go far in the tournament. So you'd imagine they'd keep them on either sides of the 8-team bracket to kick things off. But could they meet in the semis or could they meet in the final? I think they could, and I think that has to be the match at CGI 2 that the fans want to see. New Wave against B Team, one battle, and then New Wave goes off to become Kingsway. B Team goes off to become whatever their branding is. I think those two teams facing in August would be huge. It's the biggest match that could happen that weekend, and I hope it does happen. And you let me know if you want it to happen, and if it does, who you think would win. In other jiu-jitsu news, there are matches happening soon. So like I said, I'm recording this on the 15th of July. On the 25th of July, on a Friday, we have WNO back. That's got Wagner Hosha against Kit Dale. The day after, there's a BJJ Stars with an absolute Grand Prix. And then the week after, on the Thursday, July 31st, we have UFC BJJ with both Tackett brothers in action, and Andrew Tacketts up against Renato Canuto. So really, really exciting matches to come in the near future. But for this edition of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, we're just focusing on no matches and the fallout of this storyline that keeps going, the Danaher Death Squad, and what's happening to it in sort of like what may be the final chapters of the book. Who do you think would win if B Team face New Wave at CGI? What do you think will happen to both teams? Who do you think will ultimately be the more successful team? Let me know in the comments, and hopefully very, very soon, my co-host on the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, Callum, will be back from his travels in Southeast Asia, and we'll be ready to preview and review all the matches coming up across the summer: WNO, BJJ Stars, UFC, BJJ, and of course, the big one, CGI 2 at the end of August.